Hello, everyone! After his father's tragic death at the hands of thugs, a reclusive engineering student creates a combat robot. Fueled by his drive for vengeance against the criminal underworld, he embarks on a personal crusade. However, local policemen view this path of vengeance as a threat, as the robot he has created has the potential to become a dangerous weapon. The movie opens with a panoramic shot of a street, showing a kid walking amidst a chaotic city. Police cars are racing around, while loudspeakers broadcast messages urging people to remain calm. Shortly after, a car pulls up at an undisclosed location. Two men step out and engage in a conversation about some Musa. Meanwhile, the police convoy drives along the streets. Officers get out of their vehicles, preparing to storm the building. After getting up the stairs, the police officers break into one of the rooms and unintentionally trigger a tripwire. Inside, they discover a robot with a timer, positioned beside barrels with highly flammable liquid. With only 18 seconds remaining, an explosion becomes imminent. The squad leader commands his squad to leave the building. The scene ends. The next one shows a guy being interrogated, with his hands chained to a table and a file placed beside him. A man enters the room and proceeds to ask a series of questions. Seated in front of the interrogator is a young guy with visible bruises from a rough arrest. The guy's name is Yahya. The interviewer smirks and takes out a picture from his file, showing some old man and a girl, triggering the first flashback sequence. The flashback shows us Yahya arriving at his university. He strolls down the hallway, glances out the window, and gives a dreamy look to a girl outdoors. She's playing the guitar with her band in the university courtyard. During the classes, Yahya chats with his classmate and helps her with engineering questions. The professor, Dr. Nassar, becomes irritated by this chatter. He calls Yahya to the blackboard and asks him to solve an equation in a specific manner. However, Yahya chooses to solve it in his own unique way. Nassar, who's the head of the mechanics and electronics department at the university, can't stand such defiance. He promptly dismisses Yahya from the class. Interestingly, the professor is the very same man interrogating Yahya in the present.
بقولك ايه؟ اطلع بره، انت كده حمار مش هتفهم انا بقول ايه. اتفضل.
Feeling frustrated, Yahya storms out into the hallway and unintentionally stumbles into another guy. The impact causes Yahya to tumble to the ground, and the guy he bumped into wants to get back at Yahya for that. The girl, whom Yahya was watching from the window earlier, steps in to defend him, but ultimately, the situation is diffused by his classmate. Lowering his gaze, Yahya goes home. Later in the evening, while his father, a watchmaker, is working, they discuss what happened. The old man tells Yahya that this isn't the first time this happened to him, and other people often call Yahya crazy. Yahya appears to be lost in thought, so his father suggests that they take a walk to a small house that belongs to their family. During their walk, the conversation between father and son is suddenly interrupted by Nasser, who addresses the old man by his name, Saleh, and demands to know where his wife is. Saleh responds that she went to her parents' house because she grew tired of police harassment, and he asks Nasser to leave. In a final revelation, Saleh admits that he had disclosed the location of Nasser's last stash to the police. Filled with bitterness, Nasser hops on his motorcycle and rides away, taunting Saleh about his weak son. The father and son keep walking until they arrive at the house that Yahya's father gave to him as a gift. Yahya has turned the space into a small workshop. He shows his father a small robot called Musa, which he named after his older brother, who died when he was a baby. The invention is controlled by a special helmet that reads thoughts and transmits them to the mechanisms. The engineer demonstrates to his father how his invention works. At the student's command, the miniature android crushes the rock to dust. At that moment, Mary enters the room and Yahya leaves, visibly upset. The girl says that she came uninvited because Yahya's phone was turned off. She confesses to Saleh that she doesn't love Yahya anymore. The next scene takes us back to the cell where the interrogator is reading the results of the student's medical examination. It says that Yahya has socialization issues. Nassar starts asking Yahya about how his father died. The second flashback again shows us Yahya talking to his father. The old man recounts that the boy's mother died in childbirth. He also says that Mary loves him. At this moment, armed men led by Nasser drive up to the house. Yahya notices them, but is too scared to do anything. The group of thugs barges into the room where Saleh is sitting. Nasser brutally attacks the old man, ransacks his house, and sets it ablaze. Meanwhile, Yahya remains huddled in the kitchen, tightly gripping a knife, too scared to come out. The next morning, firefighters successfully put out the fire in the house, while medics carry Saleh's lifeless body outside. In the evening, Yahya gets a visit from Mary. The guy says he wants to sell what's left of his father's house and move into the cottage he has furnished as a workshop. The student is summoned to the police station to give a statement. However, the officer tells him that Nasser has an alibi, which means that he will be released soon. The flashback ends, and we are back in the interrogation room. Yahya is uncuffed and questioned about the details of what happened. He continues his tale, sharing that he had contemplated suicide after Saleh's demise. With disdain in his voice, the interrogator says that only cowards would resort to such an action, accusing Yahya of being one. He also says he feels sorry for Saleh, who tragically perished in the flames, while his son did nothing. Meanwhile, we see another flashback. In his house, Yahya looks at the suitcase with money he received from selling his father's dwelling. At one point, he jumps up and decides to set himself on fire, along with the place. In the end, Yahya doesn't have the courage to go through with the plan, so the man in the interrogation room scornfully labels him a coward. Yahya vividly remembers seeing a vision of his father, who appeared before him. Seeking forgiveness, Yahya attempts to apologize, but his father demands something different, a retribution. After all, the criminals could target another innocent person tomorrow, and they must be stopped. Though filled with fear, Yahya finds solace as his father embraces him.
كان لازم واحد فينا يتحرق عشان ينور الطريق للتاني.
Dad asks his son to make tea and offers to discuss what needs to be done next. As Yahya turns away, Saleh's vision disappears and leaves Yahya in an empty room. He thinks the old man has gone out the door, but the lock is jammed. To get outside, Yahya uses his miniature robot. He then walks out onto the porch, but when he turns around, he sees his invention. Yahya then realizes what must be done and goes down to the basement where the main part of his workshop is located. There, he begins to assemble something. Yahya continues to testify, but he spends most of his time in the basement. After a while, Yahya managed to build a full-scale replica of the miniature robot, now standing taller than any human. The student loads his new pal onto a cart and then drives to the station. There, he meets Nasser, who extends an offer to reconcile and forget about their conflict. Eventually, the criminal responsible for his father's death is set free, and Yahya himself leaves the police station. Nasser heads to an abandoned building where his accomplices await him. Unexpectedly, Yahya shows up there too. After hearing a hurtful joke about his father, Yahya vanishes through a doorway, prompting the leader to send his henchmen after him. Yahya has brought along his robot in the trunk of his car. Locking himself in one of the rooms, he puts on the helmet and activates the tool of vengeance. With his thoughts, he commands Musa to eliminate the criminals. Nasser is knocked down as the robot tosses a beam at him. Musa then puts him into a car and sets it on fire. The driver of a passing car accidentally witnesses everything. However, Yahya doesn't hurt him and swiftly guides the robot away from his line of sight, disappearing into the billowing smoke and flames. Nevertheless, the man manages to film Musa on his phone. In the following scene, we see the eyewitness who captured the burning car incident on video. He shows it to his friends, sparking a discussion about the origin of the robot. As time passes, the video goes viral. Yahya's invention is being hailed as a weapon of future wars. Yahya is aware of the hype surrounding his invention. The scene then shifts back to the interrogation room, where Yahya admits that without Nasser, Musa would not have been created, which means none of the subsequent events would have occurred. The interrogator says it's fate that guides people's path. Then we see Professor Nassar in a doctor's office with his terminally ill son. The child requires expensive surgery overseas. As an alternative, the doctor suggests seeking assistance from a younger and less experienced colleague. The professor doesn't like this option. Towards the end of the scene, he receives a phone call and then leaves with his wife and child. Meanwhile, Yahya continues to listen to the news in his workshop, with reports highlighting the potential danger posed by the battle robot freely roaming Egypt. Suddenly, the equipment around the robot starts acting weird, and the printer prints something. The professor is called in for a police meeting where everyone gathers to watch the video featuring the robot. The authorities are convinced that the invention needs to be neutralized promptly. Lieutenant Colonel Zakaria and Professor Nassar are assigned to take charge of the case. Nassar is given permission to interrogate the culprits once they are apprehended. Meanwhile, representatives from the Ashkar Corporation are also working to determine the nature of the advanced weaponry in the viral video. Their objective is to find out everything about the robot before the police do. While the officers of the law are trying to figure out what they're up against, Yahya's printer gives him a strange message. "I'm sure you know me, just like I know you created Musa. Their bad luck made them cross your path. Musa came out of the flames that burned your father. But if it's still burning, let me know. Your old friend." In the next scene, Nassar and Zakaria arrive at the place where Nasser was burned alive in a car. There, the professor meticulously examines the surroundings, formulating initial conclusions regarding the composition and weaponry of Musa. The police officers regard him skeptical at first, but ultimately accept the provided information. One of the teachers present at the secret committee on Musa happens to be Mary's father, and he also holds a high-ranking position at the Ashkar Corporation. After returning home, he faces his daughter's resentment as he abruptly left her in the middle of a movie to discuss the robot situation with his colleagues. Back in the workshop, Yahya and his friend, Reka, discuss the TV news over a cup of tea.
أنا بالعكس أنا بحب أطمن الناس إن قوات الأمن قايمة بواجبها على أكمل وجه.
The girl brought Yahya a notebook in which he has sketched for her a design for a new car engine. However, she also found images of Musa's prototype there and immediately realized who created the robot. She asks Yahya to show her the robot. After a little hesitation, he opens the entrance to the basement where his invention is kept. While the two are talking, an officer reports to Zakaria that they brought someone to the station for questioning. He orders to interrogate the guy and put him under surveillance. When the interrogation is over, Mohammed is released to his father. Rika takes Yahya to her place and leads him to a huge garage with an orange muscle car. Looking at it, Yahya says that his father's car proved too small for Musa. Then he decides to confess to his friend that he started this crusade to avenge his dad, but now he plans to avenge everyone. Rika advises him to confess to Mary that everything that's happening is his doing, so that she will finally see him as a knight in shining armor and a real man. But Yahya refuses. He tells Rika about a message that came to him from an old friend. He says that the mysterious man will secretly send him the names of thugs who need to be dealt with. He already has an impressive list of arms dealers, illegal substance dealers, and child kidnappers on his hands. The two begin their quest for justice. Their first target is a building with armed guards, where criminals are keeping the children they've kidnapped. The robot has mastered the skill of folding itself into a compact form to hide inside Reka's car. Musa hurls a car, smashing it through a wall, and deals with many thugs, while Yahya and Reka stay in their car nearby. Musa, damaged in the shootout, is about to be finished off by a thug with an RPG. Yet, the resourceful robot defies the odds and launches a counterattack against the remaining gunmen. It lets the kids out and pursues the gang leader onto the rooftop. Musa pushes the villain down, but in a final act of defiance, the gang leader pulls the pin on a grenade. The robot survives the explosion and lets everyone out. Yahya and Reka get in the car, pick up Musa, and drive off. After this, we again see the station and the expert hired by the police. He requests a dossier and all the details about the robot from Zakaria. Meanwhile, the police arrive at the scene of Musa's showdown with the criminals. Turns out the robot killed around 20 armed thugs. According to the press, it wasn't a mere personal confrontation, but rather a fight for justice. Nassar also arrives there. On the floor, he finds a certain detail that sparks his interest. The professor concludes that the robot is being transported in a special car and controlled remotely. The authorities request camera footage. At the end of the scene, the man finds the children freed by Yahya. In the workshop, Yahya and his friend take care of the car and Musa, making sure everything is in order. Reka shows interest in how the robot works, prompting Yahya to give her a lesson on how to operate his invention. Much to their delight, Reka succeeds on her first try, making it dance elegantly. The police continue their search, and Musa continues to protect the people of the city. The next scene takes place at Nassar's home. In his room, He listens to his voice recordings and completes the portrait of Musa with new details. He also assembles a mysterious device. The robot, meanwhile, rescues an entire school bus. People on the street see the android as a new superhero and hang pictures of it on the walls. The long flashback ends, and we are back in the interrogation room, where Nassar continues to question Yahya, angrily taunts him, and even threatens him. Eventually, the professor pushes Yahya to the floor, and the student passes out. The flashback continues. Reka and Mary come to see Yahya. He reveals the robot to his beloved, only to be met with a lack of understanding. Instead, she condemns his actions and says she's scared for his safety. Mary decides she can't stay and says Yahya needs to come to his senses. As she leaves, she reminds him that he can be a hero even without Musa. With tears in his eyes, Yahya silently watches as she goes, realizing that he can't stop his quest for justice. At the police station, the officers gather data from cell towers and examine the reports regarding Soleil's murder. As they start to see a connection between these incidents, they speculate on what they should do when they find the robot. The professor expresses the desire to hang the inventor of Musa and dismantle the robot. In one of the videos, Nassar notices Soleil's vehicle and suggests that it could potentially serve as a hiding place for the robot. He requests the license plate number for further investigation. Inside the workshop, Yahya is still upset about the interaction with Mary, but Reka is there to comfort him.
متضايقش نفسك يا يحيى. أنا كنت عارفة إن كل ده هيحصل بالأول.
She suggests hiding the robot because she doesn't trust Mary. The girl thinks the latter might do something stupid in a state of shock. At the same time, Nassar realizes that the car belonged to Soleil. Suddenly, a car pulls up to Yahya's workshop and armed men get out of it. They want to break down the door. Yahya himself returns to his house, from where he is taken away for questioning. Yahya says that his home was searched and nothing was found. He doesn't understand why he was taken away. Zakaria doesn't listen to the inventor and only insults him and asks him how many accomplices he has. He asks about Musa's whereabouts. But at that moment, the lawyer enters and takes Yahya away. Nassar is furious about the suspect being escorted away, but the man next to him responds by saying that the police have nothing on him. He reveals that their team has secretly bugged Yahya's house. The professor leads the man to a separate room, where he reveals that his father was a law enforcement officer and he had once desired to pursue the same career. Nassar believes that there is a snitch within the department, leaking information about police operations, and he says it might be Zakaria. At the workshop, Reka tells Yahya that the police called her. The guy replies that it was a misunderstanding which has already been resolved. They attempt to figure out who is to blame for the leaked information and suspect Mary might have something to do with that. The next scene shows us Nassar's sick son, Yusuf. He's getting worse by the day.
كل يوم بيعدي الحالة بتسوء زيادة.
The doctors keep urging the professor to agree to an experimental surgery performed by a young doctor, but he doesn't want to take any chances. As the doctor leaves, Yusuf tells his dad that he's not afraid because Musa will save him. Nassar leaves the room, stunned, and goes to see Samish, the director of Ashkar Corporation and Mary's father. He asks the old man to help him catch the robot. In return, he makes a promise to hand Musa over to his corporation for research, though not for free. During the conversation, it's revealed that the professor lost his father when he participated in a counter-terrorist operation in northern Egypt. Nassar also reveals that he lost his eldest son to illness, and now his second child is dying from the same cause. The professor needs the money to pay for an expensive surgery that can save Yusuf's life, with minimal risk and without any experimental procedures. The men shake hands. Nassar proposes a plan. Fake people pretending to be tourists should board a train. Between the two cities, they should hijack the train using weapons. They plan to expose Musa's vulnerability to the public through the press, aiming to sway public opinions against the robot. Nassar suggests capturing the robot by luring its inventor into a trap. He also proposes staging the kidnapping of Yahya's beloved as part of a domino effect strategy. The ultimate goal of his plan was for Musa to be captured. Seeing the news report about the hostages on the train, Yahya naturally decides to intervene. With Reka, they catch up to the train, but the thugs are planning to do something to the cars. Along with Yahya and Reka, police cars follow the train, and a helicopter flies overhead. Despite the intense pursuit, Musa manages to enter the train through the roof. Once inside the train car, one of the thugs activates Nassar's device, causing Musa to lose power. The thugs then attempt to saw through the immobilized robot using a chainsaw, but a passenger unexpectedly knocks the tool out of their hands. The villains make a desperate effort to detach the car from the train. They almost succeed when Musa springs back to life, swiftly neutralizing all the thugs, and connects the train car using its body. Musa acts as a bridge, allowing people to safely cross over to the safe section of the train. This doesn't end without consequences for Musa though. It loses its arms and crashes to the ground at full speed. The empty section of the train immediately derails. Through the robot's eyes, Yahia watches the other section moving away safely. People are out of harm's way. Back in the workshop, Reka and Yahia notice a CD taped to the wall. When they play the recording, they witness an alarming scene of Mary being held hostage, with the kidnappers demanding to give up Musa. The thugs say Yahia knows where to find them. While Reka suspects it's a trap, Yahia's determination compels him to take action. The two go to Samij, Mary's father, to find out what happened. Yahia asks who's the man who came up with the plan to capture Musa. In the following scene, we find ourselves back in the interrogation room, where Yahia confidently claims to know the mastermind behind everything. Nassar responds by stating that the cards have been unfolded and helps Yahia up from the floor, guiding him back to his chair. Next, we find ourselves back in Yahia's workshop, where Reka sends his mysterious helper the professor's name. Yahia wants to go to Nassar alone, without Musa. He believes that destroying the robot will save Mary, and since the professor needs all the information about the robot, he won't kill the inventor until he knows how it works. Yahia also tells Reka that she can rely on his informant. At this point, the computer receives data on Nassar's whereabouts. Yahia has one last conversation with Musa.
أنا عارف إنك مالكش ذنب بس زمن خدمتك انتهى.
Yahia's plan is to tell everyone the truth. He hacks into billboards and TV broadcasts in the city and addresses everyone, telling his story about his difficulties in the university, the death of his father, and the creation of the robot.
أنا اسمي يحيى صالح الخياط.
He blames himself for everything that happened and says he has to answer for everything he did. In the end, he leaves the address where Musa is kept, the same booby-trapped building we saw at the beginning. A commotion starts in the city. The cops enter the building with the robot, and Yahia surrenders to the authorities. The squad manages to escape just before the detonation. In the interrogation room, Nassar gets a report on what happened. Musa has been destroyed. Yahia says he's willing to show the blueprints of the robot, which only he knows, in exchange for Mary. Nassar threatens him and replies that Yahia's girlfriend will stay at the station until he gives the necessary information. Yahia points out that Samij won't just leave it at that. Nassar commands to let Mary go, but to keep an eye on her for the time being. The girl gets into Reka's car and drives away after talking to Yahia over the phone. She tells Yahia that she didn't betray him. Yahia begins drawing blueprints right on the wall of the interrogation room, when cars and a bike, emitting thick smoke, pull up to the station. Behind the wheel of the truck is the inventor's mysterious friend, with his team in the back of the truck. Inhaling the smoke, the police officers begin to faint, but Yahia reacts quickly by pulling his shirt to his nose and getting the antidote concealed in his shoe. Nassar threatens to kill Yahia, but suddenly, the building plunges into darkness. The professor doesn't understand what's happening and hastily leaves the room. Soon after, the informant's team in gas masks comes in and informs Yahia that the building is going to blow up in 10 minutes. While they go back to the truck, Yahia erases his unfinished drawing from the wall and is about to leave himself, but he suddenly hears Nassar's men in the corridor and realizes that he can't get past them. He contacts Reka and instructs her to take Mary away. The two girls leave just as the building erupts in an explosion. Yahia's team also leaves the premises, and it appears that Yahia himself succumbs to the fire. Near the house, Reka hands Mary a letter from Yahia. In it, he expresses his joy at Mary being safe and acknowledges that it wouldn't have been possible without Reka. Yahia mentions that he became a hero even without the help of Musa, as Mary had asked him. He urges Mary to take care of herself and shares that he is now in a better place. In the meantime, Nassar tries to make a getaway to the airport with his son, but gets interrupted by Zakaria. Just before being apprehended, the professor agrees to the new doctor for Yusuf. In the epilogue, the informant locates Yahia amidst the wreckage and rescues him, placing him on a cart, similar to how the inventor had done to the robot. The informant drives Yahia away to safety. Yahia opens his eyes. According to the local press, this Egyptian movie was among the first in the Arab world to showcase advanced technology. Its release coincided with a historical moment when numerous Middle Eastern nations decided to increase their investments in cutting-edge technologies. Examples include the UAE's artificial intelligence strategy and the establishment of Egypt's new national AI platform. An intriguing aspect of the film is the paradoxical role played by the robot Musa, as it becomes one of the few influences in Yahya's life that helps him embrace humane values. This raises the thought-provoking question: can new technologies make us more human? As always, check out the movie name in the video description. In the meantime, tell us in the comments. Do you think progress will bring people closer together, or instead lead to a crisis for humankind? And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see even more cool recaps.